you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today is the update to the Murder of Fire. This is a stamina Dragonknight build focused upon survivability, sustain, damage output for all content, and above all being as fun as possible. Most builds aren't viable and fun at the same time. This one is. So first of all, we're going to go into the stats. Make sure I've got our buffs on. We are on 10k max magicka, 18.2k max health, and 32.4k max stamina. We're on almost 1,400 stam recovery, and we are on 4.5k weapon damage, which will go up with our buffs and bonuses and such. And of course, we've got 52.5% crit. That's chance, by the way, not crit damage. 15k spell resistance and 11.5k physical resistance. We're on 64 points into max stamina, stage 4 vampire with a shadow Mundus stone, and of course we're using our Tam takeaway broth as our food. Now that will give us max health, max stamina, health recovery, and stam recovery. Now if you don't have that food, you can of course use Dubious Command Throne. This is very, very similar. Lower stats of course with no health recovery, but it does have stam, health, and stam recovery combined. So it's quite nice and a lot cheaper to make as well. If you don't have either of those, or you preference having higher stats, you can of course use this, which will give you max health and max stamina flat out. No recovery bonus of course, so you will have to heavy attack a bit more often, but your flat stamina and your flat health will be much, much higher. Now, if you are very comfortable with this build, you're very good at your survivability and you're not struggling whatsoever, you can of course use this. Now this stuff has been mostly used to smack target skeletons. In actual content it's not really viable unless you change your attributes, in which case of course your damage output will be lower. Most people don't actually demonstrate that. So if you use this food, you obviously don't want to be really, really squishy and have like 10, 12 or whatever k health. This particular build, the way it's built, you can have about 15k health with this food without buffs, and that is if you put one health glyph on an infused large piece of armor. So if you do that, you're covered. If you don't, you're going to be ultra squish. With minor toughness or ebon, you'll hit about 16.6k health, which is absolutely fine, especially for trials and such if you've got buffs and that coming in, but you will be a little squishier than usual. Also, if you do have both the buffs, you'll hit about 17, 18k almost. So it's not quite so bad. But if you do struggle, of course, you can swap to any of these foods that you prefer. Anyway, now we're going to look at the skills. First of all, I'm going to explain everything, and then I'm going to tell you, of course, where they will come from, what morphs you need, and all that good stuff. If you do know this already and you do want to skip it, you're more than welcome to do so. But if you do ask questions that I've already answered in this section, in the comments section below, I will not be responding to them because it wastes my time and yours. So, here we go. Start off with the basics. Venomous Claw, this is very, very simple. Ardent Flame skill line, second one you unlock. Starts off as Searing Strike, morph it into Venomous Claw. Now this is a single target damage over time ability. It's really simple. You just hit the target with it. There you go. Leave it running. That lasts for 10 seconds, and as you can see here, the longer it lasts, the more damage it does. It increases every single tick by 12% every 2 seconds. So this has to go for its full duration if you can help it. It's really cheap, but don't spam it. Just leave it and forget about it. Next up is Rearm and Trap. This is in the Fighters Guild skill line. You do need Fighters Guild 8, I believe, to unlock this. Starts off as Beast Trap, morph it to Rearming Trap. Now this is also very simple. You need to keep it on the target at all times. It can immobilize enemies, but it doesn't immobilize bosses. However, you still do get the damage and the buff from it. So you put it down on the ground. When it pops, it will do damage over time for 6 seconds. And when it's finished, it will rearm itself and do another 6 seconds. So it's a 12-second damage over time in total. And what this does is, as well as physical damage to the target, it also applies minor force to you, increasing any crit damage that you do by 10%. So this is a buff to your damage as well as a damage over time ability. Use this in your rotation every single rotation. It must be put down at least once every time. Flames of Oblivion is next. Ardent Flame, skill line, 5th ability to unlock. It does take a while to get this. Starts off as Inferno, morph it to Flames of Oblivion. Now this did get a little bit buffed, but that is in the way that it hits more than one target. Damage-wise, what this does is, I know it is using Magicka to cast it, but it's not scaled off your max Magicka. This particular skill is scaled off of whichever one of your 2 resources is higher. So if your magic is higher, this will scale off of that. If your stamina is higher, it will scale off of that. This does grant you Major Prophecy and Major Savagery for being on the bar, increasing your crit chance by 10%, but we've got that covered in our potions anyway, so that's not really important. But what is important is this lasts 15 seconds. You only need to fire it once every 15 seconds, no more. Because when you fire it once, every 5 seconds it will issue 2 fireballs at 2 different targets. Otherwise, 1 fireball if it's 1 target. Now, as you can see, it's not hitting anybody because I'm not in a fight. As soon as you're in aggro of anything, and something's trying to hit you, or you're trying to hit them, every 5 seconds you'll see the ball launch. Simple as that. Now if you're hitting 2 targets, ignore that volcano. It hits 2 targets. There's too much going on there. We need to avoid some of those visuals because that's going to spoil too much if you haven't seen this before. Now, next up is Bloodthirst. This is very, very simple. It's in a dual wield skill line. First ability to unlock. Starts off as Flurry, morph it to Bloodthirst. Now, you can morph this to Rapid Strikes if you prefer, but just bear in mind they are 2 very similar skills, but with very different end results. Rapid Strikes will give you a very, very small amount of increased damage per hit, so this will do more damage overall. And in all the tests so far, they're so close, you don't even need to have Rapid Strikes if you really don't want to, and you can get away with this one. This one is different because instead of increasing each hit in terms of its damage output until the last one, which the last one does deal 300% more damage, you will actually heal for 60% of the damage done. And this is very simple. You just stab it, and then the last one will hit harder. But you must connect with the last one. If you connect with the last one, you will receive a heal equivalent to 60% of the last hit. If you don't hit with the last hit, you will receive no heals. So, Rapid Strikes is a tiny bit more damage. Bloodthirsty has a heal. So basically, for doing your rotations, you stay alive. It's a very, very strong ability. I would highly recommend this morph over the other. But if you're in an optimized situation and you've got some very strong healers, you know you're not going to die to stupid stuff because you're experienced as a group together and you trust them if you like, although I'm a little bit wary of some, then of course you can use the other morph. But I would highly recommend using this one. Blood Craze is the next ability. It's the second ability you unlock in the dual wield skill line, as you can see. Starts off as Twin Slashes, morph it to Blood Craze. Now, Rend Slashes has exactly the same damage over time bleed as this does. They're exactly the same. And bleeds go through physical resistances, so you don't have to worry about penetrating values as far as that's concerned. The damage over time ability will do exactly what it says on the tin, excluding, of course, buffs and crits. Now, the difference is, as you can see at the moment, Blood Craze says that the initial hit is 2.3k. This is without buffs and bonuses and all that good stuff. Rend Slashes, the other morph to it, has roughly about 2.5, 2.6 on the initial hit. And you're only going to use this once every 10 seconds, so that initial hit is only used once every 10 seconds that you apply it. So it's not a massive increase in DPS, but you can use that if you prefer. Again, just like Rapid Strikes instead of Bloodthirsty, it's a small amount of increase. You're not going to see anything dramatic, but if you do want to push for that tiny, tiny increase, then you can. The difference is, however, with this one being slightly lower on the initial hit, is that every 2 seconds that this dot is active, you will actually heal. So as you can see at the bottom there, you heal for 1.3k every 2 seconds during the duration of this ability. So all you do is you hit the target with it, and you leave it running. And over 10 seconds, that will do damage and heal you. Very, very simple to use. So this attaches to the target, so does this. This fires every 5 seconds, this stays to the target, and this stab, 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 and you're done. Very simple stuff so far. Next up is Flawless Dawnbreaker. Now this is on our ultimate on the front bar for stats only. Because, for being on the bar, this will of course give us 5% increase to weapon damage. It does do damage over time, it does hit quite hard, it is a very cheap ultimate. I would recommend using it if you are low on resources, that'll make sense when we get to the passives, or the boss is almost dead and you don't have enough ultimate to fire the back bar one. The rest of the time, don't fire this. Keep this as your bonus to weapon damage on the front bar. Now it starts off as Dawnbreaker, morph it to Flawless Dawnbreaker. You will need passives to go alongside this, but we'll get to those in a moment. Next up is Resolving Vigor. Of course, this is in the Assault skill line. You will have to go to PvP for this, or you can go to Battlegrounds, which again is PvP, but it's not open world. Cyrodiil, you could be chasing a Zerg and just be dead all the time and never get any points. Battlegrounds, if you die or if you lose, it doesn't matter, because every time you lose a Battlegrounds, you will still get points. So I would encourage you to go into there, slug it out, get what you need, and get out. Starts off as Vigor, morph it to Resolving Vigor. This is very simple. Heal over time in area of effect or anyone caught by that. Last 5 seconds, do not spam it, because if you spam it, all you're doing is restarting it. Don't do that. Cast it, leave it running, and if you need to do it again when it runs out, do it again. Next up, of course, is Poison Injection. Now, this does take some time to unlock. This is in the bow skill line. So, 5th ability to unlock. Starts off as Poison Arrow, morph it to Poison Injection. Now, this is very simple. I just shot him with a Poison Arrow. But it does damage over time, as you can see. Every 2 seconds, that will do damage. But keep this up 100% of the time, because while the enemy is getting lower and lower and lower, this progressively does more poison damage to them. The damage over time can deal up to 260% more damage to enemies the lower their health is. So this is a passive execute. Keep this up the whole time. Next up is Razor Caltrops. This is also in the Assault skill line along with Vigor. This is Caltrops to start with, morph it to Razor Caltrops. Now this got buffed a bit as well to make sure that player-based AoEs were somewhat balanced. And so, to balance things, this actually hits a lot harder now. It does damage over time every 1 second to all enemies caught in this AoE. Anyone caught there will take damage over time. High damage over time. But, also, the initial hit, when it lands, also has a high or hard-hitting effect as well in physical damage. Now, the trick to this, of course, inside our rotation, I'll explain this in more detail, is, of course, the damage initially depends on what weapon you're holding. So our bow, we have a little bit less weapon damage on our back bar than we do the front. So if you swap bars while it's in the air, the initial hit will land while you're on your dual wield, which means it will hit harder. So we always put this at the end of our rotation so we can swap and get a bigger hit. But essentially keep that down all the time. Next up is a flex slot. Now, if you've seen this before, you know exactly what this does. So we're going to explain this first of all, then I'm going to tell you what you can swap it to and why. First of all, when you activate this, by the way, this is in the Earth and Heart skill line, second ability to unlock, starts off as Molten Weapons, morph it to Molten Armaments. When you activate this, it will last 36 seconds. As you can see, my buff time is there. And what this will do is this will allow you to have major sorcery for you and your group. Now, of course, we're not using any spell damage based stuff, so that doesn't affect us. But what it does do also is increases the damage we do to our heavy attacks by 50% while active. So any heavy attacks we do while this is active increases all of them by 50%. Unless they're off balance heavy attacks, in which case they're even stronger. Now this used to be 40%, but now it's 50%. So it did get a bit of a buff. So if you keep this up, anytime you need to do one of these, you'll hit harder. Now there are some very important passives that go alongside that, which I'll explain in a moment. Now, if you're not using a heavy attack rotation, or you're not using heavy attacks that often, or you feel like you don't necessarily ever really struggle with your resources, especially if you're using an alternate method, which I'm going to explain in the gear and such, you can, of course, change this out. You want Nerf and Heart ability here no matter what. You can change it to Eruption. Now, Eruption is based off of magic. So the more magic you have, the more damage this does. That's not really why we're using it. We're using it as a gap filler to make sure we've got some extra damage coming in. If we're not using the ability to increase our heavy attacks, we can put this flame AoE down on the ground and do damage every 1 second instead. Now this is very, very powerful, believe it or not, even though we are spec for stamina. It does an initial hit for flame damage. It has damage over time, almost 1k every 1 second. And of course, if you've got buffs in your group, especially if someone is using Engulfing Flames, this will actually get stronger. So this can benefit us instead of just buffing our heavy attacks while buffing the group with Major Sorcery. If your group is already covered with Major Sorcery, you don't need it. You can use this instead. I will go over this in the rotation, however. Next up is Endless Hail. This is in the bow skill line, which I've just gone past. It's the second ability to unlock. Starts off as Volley, morph it to Endless Hail. This is buffed to hell with a Maelstrom weapon, so if you do have access to it, obviously this will make a big difference. But essentially this is an AoE on the ground, which does damage every 1 second. It's incredibly powerful. It must be up 100% the time if you can help it. So keep your Caltrops up, keep your Volley up, or Endless Hail, and keep your Eruption up as well. Now, Eruption, I should have gone over that already, by the way. Earth and Heart, last ability to unlock, starts off as Ash Cloud. Morph it to Eruption, not the other one, because the other one does heals, not damage. As you can see, we've got 3 major AoEs on the ground there. One's doing 1k a second, another one's doing 1k every half a second, the other one's doing 2k a second. So we've got some really decent damage over time on the ground there. This, like I said, however, is a rapid firing dot. It's every half second instead of 1 or 2, and it does get buffed to hell by the Maelstrom weapon. Next up is our ultimate. This comes from the Ardent Flame skill line. Starts off as Dragonknight standard, morph it to Standard of Might. Now this is your main ultimate. You need to use this all the time. It's very expensive. It costs 250 ultimate, but once you put this down on the ground, anything that is standing in it will take damage over time. Don't know if I've got enough to fire it. I don't. Anything that's standing in it will take damage over time, and anything that you do damage-wise will be enhanced by 15%, and also you'll take 15% less damage. This lasts for 18 seconds. It's incredibly long, and it's really, really strong. You don't want to be firing off Dawnbreakers every 5 seconds. You want to get this ultimate ready, keep all your dots down, keep all your damage in, and then fire that banner on top and keep doing your rotations. Anything inside of here will get annihilated. It's very, very strong indeed. So that's your main ultimate. Now, passives. Now, these are very important. This one here increases your burning and poison status effects by 50%. So if you do poison damage, you have a chance to do a poison status effect, which is a 6-second damage over time effect. That will be stronger if it applies. Burning status effect as well from Flame. We are using Flame. That also applies a damage over time, and this will be enhanced. Also, while a burning status or poison status effect is applied, whichever one happens within 5 seconds, you will actually gain back resource of its type. So if it's burning, you'll gain back 500 magicka. If it's poison, you'll gain back 500 stamina. And this can happen once every 5 seconds. So this really helps towards your sustain. When you deal direct damage with an Ardent Flame ability, you reduce the enemy's movement speed. That's not that important, but you can take it if you want. Increases damage of your Fiery Breath, Searing Strike, and Dragonknight standard abilities by 3% and the duration by 2 seconds. So this is, of course, enhanced. You've got Searing Strike, which is your Venom Claw, and you've got Fiery Breath and your Dragonknight standard. The Dragonknight standard is enhanced. We are using it. Venomous Claw is enhanced. We are using that. Noxus Breath is the Fiery Breath. We don't really use this that much, but in situations where it's lots and lots of AoE stuff, you may want to swap Blood Craze for that instead, because it does have a really high initial hit. It does do damage over time to all targets rather than just one, and it lasts the same duration, and it is a little bit cheaper as well. So you can use this instead if you want. It's entirely up to you, but that will affect that ability as well. Also, this increases the damage from your Flame Area of Effect abilities by 6%. Now, you might argue that we're not using any, but we are. If you use Eruption, that is a Flame Area of Effect ability, and that will buff it. And so is your banner. So we do want that passive. This also decreases the cost of all Stamina Poison abilities. So, Poison Injection is ridiculously cheap for a Dragonknight. Venom Claw is already cheap anyway. And, of course, Noxus Breath is cheap. Any Poison abilities are reduced in cost. Draconic Power, we're not actually using any of these abilities, but you will want a couple of the passives. This increases the amount of damage you can block. Of course, you're going to block. This helps. This, while a Draconic Power ability is active, your healing received is increased. We're not using any, so it's irrelevant, but if you do choose to use a resist buff or something, you will get a healing received bonus for doing so while it's active. This increases your health recovery for each ability of its type warns. So that's irrelevant. We don't need that. We haven't got anything on the bar. And this increases the range of your instant melee attacks by 2 meters. So any of these, your light attacks, your heavy attacks, your venomous claw, your rending slashes, your or blood craze, your bloodthirst or rapid strikes, any of those will actually have an increased range. Instead of 5 meters, they are actually 7. So that is relevant. You do want that. This will increase your spell resistance by 3300. Goes without saying you want resistances so you don't die. Dragon Knights have really high spell resist. Get this passive. Earth and Heart is the most important passive in the DK tree, in my opinion. This here increases the duration of your Earth and Heart abilities by 20%. So, Molten Armaments last longer, up to 36 seconds. Eruption lasts 18 seconds. And, of course, if you do choose to use your oh shit ultimate, this is when you're in trouble, by the way. If you haven't got a healer or the group's not so good at keeping you up, swap your banner for this. If you pop it, you get 12 seconds of basically immortality. You only take 3% of your max health for every hit you receive. And you ignore resistances as far as damage is concerned. So this is your oh shit button. But again, this is affected also. So this increases the duration of these abilities that you use or may use. Battle Roar is nuts. If you use an ultimate ability, you get 46 health, stamina, and magic back for every single ultimate point cost. Which is why we don't use this little tiny one unless we're in trouble. We use the big one. Because the more the cost, the more resources. This here, when you cast an Earth and Heart ability, you and your group gain minor brutality for 20 seconds, increasing your weapon damage by 10%. This is an Earth and Heart ability. As you can see there, I've got a little hammer in my buff timers. That gives me and the group 10% increased weapon damage, just for using the skill. So although this has its own abilities and damage output and all the rest of it, it does apply to this passive, and we do get a buff for using it. Not to mention, of course, there is another bonus for this. If you use an Earth and Heart ability, you will get 3 ultimate. And this can happen once every 6 seconds. So if you fire an ability once every 7 seconds, you'll be fine. If you fire every 5, you won't. So you have to make sure that at least after 6 seconds of your previous cast, you can cast another one. If it's later, but you will get the ultimate regardless. When you cast an Earth and Heart ability, you restore 990 stamina. This is really important. Fire this to do damage. Get stamina back. So it buffs and gives you stamina back at the same time and does damage. Again, this applies also to molten armaments. If you use this to give everyone major sorcery, you get minor brutality for everyone as well, and you get heavy attack bonus increase, and you get stamina back. Whichever one of these two abilities you use, whichever one benefits you the most, is up to you, but they do both get those passives. Dual wield, of course, you want to get every single one of these. Very, very important. This increases the damage done with dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25%. We do not have an actual execute, so if we keep doing what we're doing, we will progressively get stronger and stronger the lower their health. This will increase the weapon damage of your offhand weapon by 6%. Offhand weapons are weaker than the main hand, so this does improve it. Reduces the cost of dual wield abilities. Of course, you want to get the cost down. Gives you a 15% damage bonus when attacking stunned, immobilized, disorient, or silenced enemies. So anyone that's CC'd or affected by anything like that, you will actually hit them harder. Grants a bonus based on the type of weapon equipped. We're using one sword and one dagger. So we've got a 3% damage increase across the board for the sword, and we've got a 1095 crit rating bonus for the dagger. If you have any of these weapons, each one of these bonuses applies to each different weapon. So if you have 2 swords, it will be 6%. If you have 1 sword, it will be 3%, and so on and so forth. You can use whatever combination you want, but these actually did top out overall to be slightly stronger than other combinations that I tested. So that sword and dagger worked really, really well. But if you're using a previous setup and you have an axe and dagger, or you have 2 axes, or even 2 daggers, it's entirely up to you. But of course, you want every single one of these passives. This will increase the damage done to targets at long range. So if you're on a run up to a fight and you start firing light attacks from range, or whatever abilities you're using with your bow, they will be enhanced while you're at range. Maybe you're in and out of mechanics and you have to move and you're keeping dots down or whatever, then of course that will benefit. But if you're up close, it won't. So do get that passive, because you will find yourself in range situations and that will help you. This will increase the critical rating while on your bow bar. This reduces the cost of bow abilities. They are quite expensive sometimes, so this helps. Hawkeye is very important. When you do a light attack or a heavy attack with your bow, you will increase your bow damage by 5%. Every light attack after that, or heavy attack that you do within 5 seconds of the last one, will add another stack. So you can actually end up with a 25% damage bonus if you keep up light attacks on your bow bar. Now, on a bow build, that will be up 100% of the time, so long as you're keeping up with your rotation. On a bow dual wield build, you won't get all the ticks, and you won't have 100% uptime on it. But the time that we do get with it will count, so you do want this. This, of course, if you dodge roll, you get Major Expedition for 4 seconds, and you can run faster to get out of trouble. That's only on your bow bar, so make sure that if you're going to do that, do it on your bow bar. Now, armor. We are wearing 1 piece of light armor, so you want to get a couple of these. This here is useless because it requires 5 pieces, and so does this, so ignore these 2, but these 3 you can get if you have the spare points. This will reduce the effectiveness of snares applied to you, and reduce the cost of sprinting. Per piece worn, we're wearing 1. This will increase your mag recovery. We are using magic abilities, so this will help, and reduces the cost of your magic abilities as well per piece worn, so this is a passive you need. This will increase your spell resistance by 363 for each piece worn as well, so we do have a small resistance bonus. We're using 5 pieces of medium armor, so we do need all of these. This will increase your crit rating per piece worn. This will increase your stam recovery and reduction to cost. This will improve your sneak if you're doing a lot of solo stuff or PvP. This increases your weapon damage by a whopping 15% for 5 pieces worn, and this also increases your movement speed while sprinting and reduces the cost of dodge roll, which is very important, of course, because we use the same bar to evade, block, and heal and damage all at the same time, so you want to make sure you get the cost down. We are using 1 piece of heavy, and this is very important. 1 piece will grant us a small physical and spell resistance bonus. It will also grant us a constitution passive, which means if we take damage once every 4 seconds, we get a small amount of resources back. And we get 2% extra health for having a heavy piece as well. These 2 are not required because they need 5 pieces, but these 3 I would definitely get. We are a stage 4 vampire, of course. If you take this passive here, you'll have 10% increased magicka and stam recovery. It goes without saying you need that. And of course, this undeaf passive is ridiculous. It's really powerful. Under 50% health, you start taking less and less and less damage, up to a maximum of 33%. The survival rate in all content that I've been into, with this passive and without it, there's a substantial difference. This is absolutely mental. I have survived so many stupid things that should have killed me because of this. I would highly recommend Vampire Stage 3 or above. Now, I know people like to put their Vampire Stage from 4 down to 3. That's entirely up to you, but I've done all content at Stage 4 anyway and not struggled, so it's absolutely fine. Just depends on what you're comfortable with mechanics-wise. Stay out of stupid and block the stuff you're supposed to block. Now, this, of course, is a final passive for this particular skill line that you really need. You don't necessarily need this, but I do like Sneak and Faster. But this reduces the severity of health recovery. You do have low health recovery as a vampire. This kind of diminishes that a little bit and makes it not quite so drastic. Now, Fighter's Guild, you are going to need these passives, of course. Intimidate and Present reduces the cost of your abilities in this tree. So, Beast Trap is cheaper. We need that. Increases your weapon damage for each Fighter's Guild ability slotted. We have a 6% bonus because we have one here, which is 3%, and one here, which is 3%. Now, I know it says weapon damage increased by 5%, but you can add another 3 to that because this is a Fighter's Guild ability. It does count. Banish the Wicked is incredibly important. Every undead, Daedra, or werewolf that you kill, you will get 9 ultimate back. It's extremely important that you get this passive because those enemies are in abundance in this game. You're going to see them all over the place. And you'll also want this. Your Fighter's Guild abilities deal an additional 20% damage to undead, Daedra, or werewolves. That means your Beast Trap, which you will be using, and your Flawless Dawnbreaker if you have to use it. Now, Undaunted is very, very important. This here, activate an ally's synergy, which you should be doing all the time, will give you 4% max resources back. You want to keep your sustain up. You want to stay in the fight. You don't want to get killed. Every synergy you take, regardless of what they do, will give you stuff back. Take the synergies. If a tank needs another spear, let him ask for one. It's not going to be hard for them to take one. The healer can just throw in a second spear, and now everybody's on cooldown. Everybody's happy. Take all the synergies. Increase your max health, stamina, and magicka by 2% for each type of armor worn. We've already been over the armor. We're in 1 piece of light, 1 piece of heavy, and 5 pieces of medium. We're wearing 3 different types, so we have a 6% max resources across the board. Health, stamina, and magic. We are, of course, an orc. We have 2k max stamina. We have 1k max health, and when we deal damage with a weapon ability, including your light and heavy attacks, or weapon skills, you will heal for 600. And this can happen once every 4 seconds, and yes, it can crit as well. The more you do, the more you heal. Keep hitting stuff. This as well increases your weapon damage by 258 and reduces the cost of sprint by 12% and increases your movement speed by 10%. We hit hard, we heal, we're very fast. This is a really, really good choice for the Murder of Fire. However, if you are an Imperial, still, from the previous setup, do not worry, Imperial is just fine. You will have really good resource gain. You will have really high flat resources, including your health, which means you can go even squishier with your food. The only thing you'll be missing is you don't get the 258 weapon damage. So just bear in mind, you'll have more health, same stamina. Your sprint stuff won't be there, but you will have better resource gain. So it's entirely up to you. Any race you want to use is entirely your choice, but the 2 top ones for me for this particular build are Imperial and Orc. Alchemy, of course, medicinal use. We are using weapon damage pots. They do last 47.6 seconds, and that is because of this passive. If you don't have this passive, they last around 36 seconds, and the cooldown is 45. At the moment, we have 100% uptime on our potions because we beat the cooldown. So you want these bad boys right here. Major brutality, major savagery, and endurance. We have recovery, we have resource return, we have crit, and we have weapon damage. Get medicinal use as soon as possible. Now we're going to go into the gear. If you've seen this before, you're not going to be too surprised. But if you haven't, hopefully this will help. So, we are using Sword of Unfathomable Darkness alongside the Dagger of Unfathomable Darkness. Now, of course, get whatever weapons you can, but these 2 were optimal overall. Nirnhoned on the sword, or on the main hand. It doesn't matter which order the weapons are in. Nirnhoned on the main hand, and Precise on the offhand. Now, this is done on purpose. Of course, most people tend to do Nirnhoned and Sharpened. We don't need the Sharpened because we do have penetration on one of our sets. So, Precise and Nirnhoned. This will put us just over the 50% bracket, meaning our Shadow Moonstone isn't useless. Now, this has got poisons on it. These are double dot poisons. I'll put this in the written guide as well so you can see exactly how to make them. These are very, very powerful. Just for doing damage with your light attacks, your heavy attacks, or weapon abilities, you can fire off 2 nasty damage over time poisons. Highly recommend using these. Very cheap to make as well. But the set itself, it has a weapon crit chance. It has a physical penetration bonus, hence why we don't need Sharpened, and has a weapon damage bonus. And I'm sure you've seen it already, but when you do damage of any kind, you have a Murder of Crows that flies around you for 12 seconds, and every 3 seconds a crow will hit the target that you're closest to. And this can be reapplied every 15 seconds. So the last one at 12 seconds will fire, and then you got a 3-second duration before you can fire them again. We're going to see if we can make this fire. There we go. There's your crows, and they'll just keep hitting the same target until they're all gone, and then you can reapply them. Now, what we've done is we've gone with 3 of these on the jewelry, and also 2 on the weapons. This is very, very easy to switch around other sets then, and you don't have to mess around too much. So 3 jewelry, all bloodthirsty with weapon damage on them, and 2 weapons on the front. You do not need this on the back, because when this does fire, you can swap bars and it will stay with you. So you can close that gap and utilize a better weapon on the back bar. Now, the back bar weapon is the Maelstrom bow with an infused enchant with increased weapon and spell damage on it. Now, of course, if you don't have the Maelstrom weapon, do not worry. You can use an agility weapon or any weapon of your choice. I wouldn't, however, recommend Unfathomable Darkness because you might fire it on the wrong bar and then you have downtimes at the wrong time. So this could be agility, a crafted weapon of your choice, or the Maelstrom weapon. Or if you've got a Master's Bow instead of a Maelstrom for now, that will do just fine. But optimized wise, you want to get the Maelstrom Bow for this as soon as you can. This weapon and spell damage glyph, by the way, with an infused enchant is here on purpose because if you're not familiar with how it works, weapon glyphs will fire from weapon abilities. So if you have a poison injection attached to the target, the initial hit will, of course, make the glyph fire. But the damage over time won't because it's attached to the target. Now, area of effect weapon abilities, like Ender's Hail, will continuously fire the glyph. Because it's not attached to the target, it's not fire and forget, it's attached to the ability itself. So if you put this down and swap bars, even though we're on the front bar now, that weapon and spell damage glyph will continuously fire for us until the skill runs out. So that's very important to know. The next set is, of course, Valken Scoria. This has stamina enchants on it. We've got 1 heavy, 1 light on the shoulder and helmet. It doesn't matter which order they're in because they have the same resistances no matter what way round they are. So if you have a heavy here for 2, 4, 2, 5, and you have a shoulder which is heavy instead, the resistance will be the same. And you can see here it's 1, 2, 2, 1 because it's light. That would be the same for the helmet. It's absolutely fine. Now, you want infused and divines. This is very simple. It gives you a max health bonus, which is awesome. And when you deal damage with a damage over time effect, you have an 8% chance to summon a meteor, which does huge damage, and it does a little area effect splash as well, and can fire once every 5 seconds. Now, this is ridiculous. Let's get this firing. We'll have some damage over time. There it comes. Boom. Now, that happens every 5 seconds if you're lucky, but you need damage over time to apply it. So, what have we got in terms of damage over time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 if you count the ultimate, 10 if you count Dawnbreaker, but we'll stay with 1 ultimate. Then we've got 10 and 11 on these 2 here. We've got up to 11 dots running at any one time because your poisons do count as well, which is absolutely mental. And then when I show you the alternate sets, we'll get another dot as well, but we'll get to that in a moment. So, Valken Scoria, Unfathomable Darkness, and on the body, you need this on the body so it fires on both bars, we've got the Red Mountain. Though you can do this with the jewelry as well if you want and have 3 unfathomable body pieces. As long as you've got 3 unfathomable and 2 weapons, it's fine. But for the sake of switching out with stronger gear later on if you want, I would highly recommend the body for this because it's easier to swap out. This gives you weapon damage, stamina, weapon crit, and then when you deal damage with a weapon ability, specifically weapon abilities, light attacks, heavy attacks, or skills, you have a 10% chance to summon the volcano. Now, I'm pretty sure you've seen this already, but anything that is a weapon ability, so your rapid strikes or bloodthirst, your blood craze, your volley, your poison injection, any of those will make it fire. Now, before we even get to rotation, obviously you've seen some of this already, but this is basically all you need to do. If you keep your dots on, stuff fires. I'll let go of the control now. Volcanoes are firing out the ground. Crows are firing from me. Fireballs are firing out the sky. Piece of cake. All you have to do is keep your dots up. Now, of course, there is a rotation in mind as well, which I will show you. But application-wise, it's really not that difficult to make all the fireworks come out. Dot, 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 dot. Leave it. Now, you don't just stand there and let everything happen, but you can. I said it was fun. There's all your fireworks. There should be a fireball coming out of the sky. There it is. Now, of course, you can change monster sets if you prefer, but out of all the testing I've done, they're all very, very, very close. Valken Scoria preference because of its fast rate of fire and its health bonus. Veladreth does have a higher weapon damage bonus, but the proc is slower and you can miss, and actually in testing, this came so close, there's actually no point to swap it. In fact, apart from occasionally maybe 100 DPS higher, it was very, 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 very close. Sometimes Valken Scoria went higher, so you don't have to swap that out, but if you choose to, you can. And also Xan is still very, very powerful, although it's mostly based on or used on Magicka sets or Magicka builds. This does actually perform very, very well on this particular build, especially if you're trial buffed as well, especially if you have a Gulf and Flames on a target, because it does boost it also. So you can use Zaan if you still prefer to use the old setup. You can use Veladreth if you like it, or if you want to, you can stick with Valken Scoria. The choice is yours. Now, swap outs as far as sets are concerned. If you want to go a little bit more optimized, you can of course drop Red Mountain and replace it with Reliquin. Now, the overall damage output of this particular build on average is around the 75k mark on the Iron Atronach. That's without Major Slayer, without Major Vulnerability, and without Minor Courage. But with Reliquin, you're talking about 83. So there is a substantial difference between the two, but both of them are still viable for all content anyway, because the damage is pretty high. But if you can get used to it, and you can understand how this set works, you can of course swap to Reliquin. But this means that you will have to make sure that you do not drop a single light attack or heavy attack, because if you do, all of these stack and win will fall off and you will lose a massive amount of damage. So if you haven't practiced enough or you can't keep up those procs, take it off and use something else. As far as something else is concerned, instead of Reliquin, you can of course use Alkosh, and for every synergy you take, you will debuff the targets in front of you by 3010 in terms of physical and spell resistance, and you will initiate a damage over time that lasts 10 seconds. Every synergy will refresh the debuff, but it will stack another damage over time. So the choice is yours. Reliquin or Alkosh if you want to go a little bit more optimized. Apart from that, if you want to stick to the basics and have loads of fireworks firing off and still be very, very viable in content anyway, stick to Red Mountain. Choice is yours. I will show a demonstration of both. Now, one more thing to change, of course. If you decide to use this cheesy food, which most people use on target dummies, they say you can have more points in health, but they never actually do it. If you want to use this stuff and have infinite sustain, you will go squishy. You do have your Undaunted passives. You do have your Orc health bonus. You do have the Valken Scoria health bonus. And you do have, obviously, your heavy armor bonus, which means we actually have a fairly decent amount of health. So if you do activate this, you'll see that my health is only 14,000, which is friggin' low. Now, if you were to put on your other set, you can do it with Red Mountain as well. You'll note that we're using Infused on all the large pieces and Divines on all the small. So Divines, feet, hands, and belt. Infused, chest, legs, and head. And Divine shoulders as well. You can replace the stamina glyph on this chest piece with an Infused health enchant. And if you do that, you'll see that my health is now 15.4. Still quite squishy, but now I have infinite sustain. Now, if you were using that for a trial, you could have minor toughness, which now puts me up to 16.7 almost. You add Eben to that, I'm way over 17k, pushing towards 18k. So this is doable with this setup without changing your attribute points in your stuff here. So you still keep a decent amount of stamina, you still keep a decent amount of health, but you will have to consider this will be more for the advanced player because your health is a bit squashier than most. So the choice is yours. You can use that if you want, but there is always a sacrifice, of course. Now, while we're there, we'll just show you the rotation real quick, and then I'm going to show you the champion points and then a dummy rotation. I'll show you two, one with the basic setup and one with the advanced one. Now, what you need to do is very simple. Light attack Venom Claw, light attack Rend and Slashes. Light attack stabs 3 times. Light attack Flames, light attack Beast Trap, swap bars. If that was awkward, again, light Venom, light Slashes, light stab, light stab, light stab, light Flames, light Beast Trap, swap. That's your front bar rotation. Your back bar rotation is Endless Hail, light attack Poison Injection, light attack Eruption, light attack Caltrops, swap. Rinse, repeat. If you have infinite sustain food, of course, if you've got all the buffs as well, you can do that all day long and you won't run out. If you do not, and you're using the Artaeum food or the flat food, make sure you throw in a heavy attack every rotation. And for each heavy attack that you require, remove one of these. The stab. So, light Venom, light Rendon, 3 stabs is what you would normally do. Light, Flame, Beast Trap, swap. If, for example, you're using different food, we're going to, say for argument's sake, we need 1 heavy attack in our rotation. We'll do heavy Venom, 1 Rendon, only 2 stabs. We take one of the stabs away because we used a heavy attack. That will line your dots up so they won't fall off for too long on the back bar. Also, one more thing to remember or note. This is a very long duration damage over time effect. Eruption is. So you don't actually need it every rotation. Fire it every 2 rotations. That will keep up the minor brutality for the group. It will keep up a decent uptime on this dot, and it won't make you waste unnecessary resources, especially since it's based on magicka as well. It's quite hard to keep up if you try and use that every rotation, unless you're fully buffed with Ellie Drain and Worm and all that good stuff. Every second rotation is more than sustainable. So every fight, you want your Beast Trap down. Start with Volley, Light Poison, Light Eruption, Light Caltrops, swap, then start your front bar. Once more, just so it makes sense. Beast swap, Volley, Light, Poison, Light, Eruption, Light, Caltrops, swap. Light Venom, Light Rendon, Light Blood Craze, or Bloodthirst, 3 times. Flame, Trap, swap. Light attack between everything. Use your ultimate, by the way, your banner, when your resources are going down. Don't drop the banner at full stamina, because if you do, you're just going to gain back resources from the Earth and Heart passives that you haven't used yet. So make sure you've got some dots down, you've wasted some juice, and then drop your banner. That way you get it back and you can reuse it. Now, champion points. Now, you can alter these if you want, depending on the content. 72 points into Ironclad to reduce the incoming direct damage that you receive. 64 points into Hardying Elemental Defender to make sure that you get a 13% reduction across the board to everything else. 51 into Fixed Skin to reduce your damage over time incoming by 19%. Just remember the Unchained passive, if you do break free inside combat, your next stamina ability will be 80% cheaper, so throw in a sneaky Caltrops. 19 points in a Quick Recovery to increase your healing received from your heals and other people, including your Blood Craze, your Bloodthirst, your Orc passive, anything like that. Any heals that you receive from you or someone else will be boosted. The Field Physician passive, obviously, if you do resurrect people, and you probably will be, pop a Vigor first, get the res in, you will take less damage while doing so. 44 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 points in Tenacity. You will heavy attack occasionally, depending on what food you're using and what content you're in. You might be low on resources, who knows. That will help you get your resources back quicker, especially during off-balance, because if you do an off-balance heavy attack, your heavy attack will be 70% stronger, so the damage will go up, and you will get double resources back. So keep an eye on buffs and debuffs and all that good stuff. 75 points into Mooncalf to increase the stam recovery that you have. 76 points into Tumbling to reduce the cost of dodge roll. We have got 4 points overlapping here that we don't actually need to spend here, but I've got nowhere else I really want to put them. You can put them into Shadow Ward if you want for a small percentage of block cost reduction, but honestly, 72 points is what you need in here, and the extra points is just for the Treasure Hunter passive, because we all know how bad RNG is. Nothing in here. 5 points into Physical Weapons Expert, 23 into Master at Arms, and 72 into Thermaturge, because we're doing a lot of damage over time. A crap ton of it, in fact. By the way, Reliquin and Alkosh do proc Vulcan Scoria. They can also proc the Budgies as well, which is the Unfathomable Darkness. I know they're crows, we call them Budgies, whatever. Precise Strikes, you got 18 points, 18% extra damage from your critical damage here, and your heals as well. We have 58 points into here, which puts us bang on penetrating values for PVE if you have all buffs and bonuses applied. 64 points into Mighty, of course, to increase your physical and poison and disease damage by 13%. So all of these contribute to all of our damage types that we're doing. Also, we have got the Exploiter passive, so if any enemies are off balance, our damage overall will increase by 10%. Now, I'm going to show you a quick dummy pass on both variations of the build. One using Unfathomable with Red Mountain and Vulcan Scoria, and the other one swapping Red Mountain for Reliquin. Both of them are using the fast recovery food. Of course, I've already explained how you can viably put this on your build. As you can see right now, 15.4k max health, which is squishy, but you can survive. Or 16.6 if you've got Ebon or Minor Toughness. If you've got both, you've got more. Again, if you are uncomfortable with that, there's nothing wrong with using your normal food. And then, of course, changing this glyph to a stamina glyph. However, if you like the extra health, you can, of course, sit on 21k, which is ridiculous, but the choice is yours. Here we go. So first of all, thank you all very, very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support. And if you are not subscribed to this channel already, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside of the channel, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, the website XynodeGaming.com. And of course, don't forget I live stream on Twitch every night from 10 PM UK time onwards, unless I say otherwise on Twitter. Once again, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.